Clara looked stunning. That's the first thing I noticed when we stepped onto the rooftop of Aura Innovations' Atlanta headquarters. Her silver backless dress shimmered under the evening lights like it had been stitched from moonlight. I was holding her coat, forgotten over my arm, standing just a few steps behind while she drifted effortlessly into the crowd. I'm Harold, 42 years old. I work logistics at a shipping company just south of the city. Nothing glamorous. Just schedules and spreadsheets. I'm the guy who makes sure other people's stuff gets where it needs to go. On time, every time. That night, though, I was just a plus one. The invisible husband of the woman everyone wanted to talk to. She laughed in a way I hadn't heard in years. Not the polite chuckle she used at home when I made some tired joke over dinner, but the kind that bubbled up from somewhere warm and familiar. I followed the sound and saw her talking to Dorian Kells, the CEO of Aura. Towering, slick, and dripping with that brand of charisma you can't teach. His hand rested lightly on the small of her back. Her posture didn't shift. If anything, she leaned into it. I stood there like a man who showed up to the wrong party. Harold, she'd said earlier, slipping her arm through mine as we entered. Just enjoy yourself. You deserve a night off. But this wasn't my world. It was hers. Designer dresses. Rooftop galas. Corporate back-patting masked as celebration. I hovered near the bar, sipping ginger ale while she moved from one group to the next like she was born doing this. That's when it happened. Dorian lifted his glass across the rooftop and locked eyes with me. A slow, private smirk spread across his face. Then, with the kind of volume that makes people lean in but still somehow carries across the crowd, he said she was always too sharp for a dock worker. I froze. Clara didn't react. Not a blink. Not a glance my way. Just kept her posture poised, eyes forward, lips parted in amusement at whatever he was saying next. The only thing she offered me was silence. I placed my drink down, hands suddenly trembling. That word, dock worker, it stuck to me like oil on skin. He wasn't wrong. That's how I started out 15 years ago. Boots, clipboards, calluses. I worked my way up the old way. No suits. No shortcuts. Just time. But somehow that label had followed me here. Into her world. I turned and walked away. I didn't wait for her to notice. Didn't look back. My shoes echoed on the polished tile as I passed glittering dresses and murmured gossip, making my way toward the elevator. It hit me in waves, the humiliation, the shame, the realization that I'd already lost her long before tonight. This wasn't some drunken mistake or flirtation. It was a choice. A long, deliberate slide into someone else's orbit. I hit the button for the lobby and stared at the reflection in the elevator doors. My tie was crooked. My eyes looked hollow. I didn't look like the man who married Clara 11 years ago. I looked like a guest at her life. When the elevator doors opened, the city lights greeted me like a quiet reminder. I stepped out into the Atlanta night, head pounding, pride shattered. I'd seen enough. And somewhere, deep in the hollow silence that followed, something inside me cracked. Atlanta rain doesn't just fall, it smears the whole city in a kind of wet exhaustion. It makes the traffic lights bleed into the streets and turns every surface into a mirror of whatever you're trying not to look at. I walked. Didn't really know where I was going, just needed to move. My dress shoes weren't made for walking, especially not in a downpour, but I didn't care. The gala was behind me. Clara was behind me. That version of my life, the one I had defended, fought for, convinced myself was still salvageable, was dissolving with every step. The sidewalks glistened under my feet. Water ran down my back, past my collar, soaking into my shirt and suit like it had a purpose. I could hear her laugh again, the one she gave Dorian. I could see his hand on her back. And I could still feel the emptiness in her eyes when she didn't flinch at what he said about me. Too sharp for a dock worker. Hell of a thing to say out loud. Hell of a thing for your wife to silently agree with. At the corner of Peachtree and 10th, under a flickering traffic light that blinked like it was just as tired as I was, I stopped. I stared at the puddles gathering at my feet. Water dripped from my chin. I felt hollow. That's when my phone buzzed. I pulled it out of my pocket, wiped the screen on my sleeve. One new message from Reed Mathis. Reed Mathis. We need to talk. You don't know who Kells really is. Just like that, the air shifted. Reed and I hadn't talked in months, maybe more. College friend, ex-army, now running some kind of private investigation outfit on the south side. We used to grab beers and complain about work before our lives took different tracks. He was always digging for something, always looking beneath the surface. I read the message again. You don't know who Kells really is. The cold in my bones changed. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was steel. All that shame, all that heartbreak, it twisted into something sharper. I stood there, drenched, heart hammering, trying to make sense of the weight behind that text. I didn't respond. I just turned around and started walking. Not home. Not yet. First, I wanted to know exactly who the hell Clara had gotten into bed with, literally or not, and why Reed thought it mattered enough to pull me back in. If there were answers to find, I wasn't going to let them hide in the dark. Not anymore. Reed's place looked like a hardware store, and a detective's office had collided and agreed to stay that way. The apartment sat above a shuttered pawn shop off Memorial Drive, one of those buildings you wouldn't give a second glance to unless you knew what to look for. The lock was new. The cameras in the hallway were too. He opened the door without saying a word. Just jerked his chin and let me in. He looked older than I remembered. Grayer, leaner. Still had that restless energy though, like he was always one bad headline away from blowing something up. Still wearing your work shoes, he said, glancing down as I stepped over a row of manila folders spread across the floor. Didn't exactly have time to change, I muttered. He didn't smile. He shut the door and walked straight into the living room, which was more like a command center. Corkboards covered in printouts and grainy photographs leaned against every wall. A laptop buzzed on the coffee table, surrounded by sticky notes, receipts, and a pair of cold energy drinks. Sit, he said. I sat. He dropped a thick envelope in front of me. That's just the overview. I opened it. Inside were screenshots, printed emails, financial statements, hotel booking overlaps. I didn't even know where to start. You recognize these? He asked. I held up one of the pages. It was a booking confirmation for a resort in Aspen. My stomach turned. Clara had told me she was in Minneapolis that week. Quarterly planning summit. Thought she was snowed in up north, I said. Reed snorted. Yeah. Snowed in all right. In a hot tub with Dorian Kells. He leaned forward, tapping one of the photos. It was grainy, clearly taken from a distance, but unmistakable. Clara in a long coat, stepping out of an SUV next to Dorian. His hand on her back again. Like it belonged there. This is what you brought me here for? I asked, my voice catching in my throat. To show me they've been. Not just that, Reed interrupted. I'm showing you a pattern. He grabbed another folder and pulled out a timeline. Names, dates, promotions, transfers. A half-dozen women from Aura Innovations, all linked to Kells in some way, all hired under his tenure, all promoted quickly, all rumored to have been involved with him. Groom and promote, Reed said, tapping the page. That's what the ex-employees are calling it. He picks women with potential, gets personal, and then uses his power to reward loyalty. Sometimes it's consensual. Sometimes it's not. Always strategic. And Clara? I asked, even though I already knew. He hesitated. There's stuff in here you're not gonna want to see. But you need to. Because I don't know if she's a victim or if she's playing the game. I flipped through more pages. A photo of a hotel key envelope addressed to C. An internal memo forwarded from Dorian with a handwritten, "Let's talk tonight." A scanned receipt for room service, dinner for two, champagne, chocolates. My hands started to shake. Reed looked at me and said, gently, you know, I don't do this to hurt people. But I also don't let people walk blind into traffic. You came to me for answers. I nodded, silent. There it was, in black and white. Clara's career wasn't built on talent alone. Maybe not at all. And the worst part? I couldn't even tell where the manipulation ended and the ambition began. Was she another pawn in Dorian's game? Or had she learned the rules and started playing on her own? I don't know who she is anymore, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Reed reached for one last photo and placed it in front of me. Clara, standing next to Dorian at a biotech conference, smiling up at him like he was the sun. She used to look at you like that, he said. And just like that, I knew whatever came next, it had to begin with the truth. Even if it broke everything. The front door creaked like it hadn't been opened in weeks, not just hours. It was almost 5 in the morning when I got home. The house was quiet, still holding its breath. I kicked off my wet shoes, set my keys down on the hallway table, and moved toward the kitchen like a man walking into a war zone. She was there. Clara sat at the kitchen island, elbows resting on the marble counter, a glass of water in front of her that hadn't been touched. Her silver dress, the one from the gala, hung off her like an afterthought now. Her hair was messier than I'd ever seen it. Her makeup was streaked down her cheekbones in faint lines, like she'd cried and then got tired of pretending she hadn't. She didn't look up. You stayed out all night, she said softly. I didn't answer. I pulled the chair out across from her and sat down, placing the USB stick on the counter between us. The plastic made a small click as it hit the surface. She finally looked at me, her eyes dark with exhaustion and something else I couldn't name yet. What is that, she asked. You'll want to listen to it alone, I said. There's audio, emails, receipts, photos, everything. She blinked. You hired someone? No, I said. A friend. He came to me. Clara looked away again, her fingers tightening around the glass. So this is it, she whispered. You think I slept with him? I don't think, I replied flat. I saw the reservations. The trips. The overlaps. The gifts. And I saw you. With him. Leaning in. Smiling like you used to. She didn't deny it. She didn't nod either. She just sat there, frozen in whatever part of herself hadn't cracked yet. It was never physical, she said finally, her voice barely holding together. I swear to you, Harold. Not like that. My jaw clenched. You think that's the part that matters? She flinched. Silence stretched between us like barbed wire. It started small, she murmured. Late meetings. Extra reviews. Dorian made me feel seen. Smart. Like I was capable of more. And I wanted that. I needed it. I stared at her. He never touched me, she insisted. But I let him believe he could. I let the line blur. I thought I was playing him. Until I wasn't. You lied, I said quietly. Not just to me. To yourself. You lied every time you looked me in the eye and said you were doing it for us. Her hand trembled now. She wiped at her face, smearing what was left of her mascara into ghosted shadows beneath her eyes. I stood. I'm not here to punish you, Clara, I said. I'm not throwing you out. I'm not asking you to leave. She looked up at me, startled. I'm asking you to decide, I continued, pushing the USB closer to her. Listen to it. All of it. And then ask yourself who you are. She reached for it slowly, like it might burn. Because right now? I said, my voice low and steady, I don't know that woman anymore. I left her there, in that silent kitchen, under a light too bright for what either of us wanted to see. And I didn't look back. 3 days passed. I didn't hear from Clara. Not a call. Not a text. Not even the usual sound of her heels in the hallway when she got up before me. She stayed in the guest room, barely moving through the house like a ghost I used to know. I didn't ask if she'd listened to the USB. I didn't want the answer, not until she wanted to say it out loud. Then the anonymous message came. It hit my phone late afternoon, just as I was clocking out of work. No sender ID. Just a single line and a video file. Unknown number. You need to see this. The video was grainy, like it had been recorded on a phone from across a room. A private dinner, maybe in a hotel ballroom or a rented suite. You could see the table, dim lights, crystal glasses, 5 women seated like they were waiting for something formal to begin. And then Dorian Kells stepped into the frame. He smiled like a man who'd already won. His voice wasn't loud, but you could hear every word. Polished, charming, full of veiled promises. Loyalty, he said, lifting a glass, is more than corporate alignment. It's about trust, discretion, chemistry. We're building something here, and that takes the right kind of people in the right positions. Laughter. A few nods. One woman shifted uncomfortably in her chair. You help me, he continued, and I help you. Promotions, travel budgets, access to strategy meetings. I look after those who look after me. It wasn't a smoking gun. Not in legal terms. But anyone with a soul could hear it for what it was. He wasn't hiding it. He was grooming, right there on video. Framing exploitation like opportunity. Then the camera shifted slightly. In the background, near the side of the room, Clara stood with a drink in her hand. Not laughing. Not leaning in. Just, still. Watching. In the second clip, the room had cleared. Only Dorian and Clara remained. She was standing now, arms crossed. Her voice cut through the quiet like glass. This was a mistake, she said. I won't be part of this anymore. He didn't argue. He just smiled like he knew she'd come back. She turned and walked away. The video ended. A moment later, another text appeared. Unknown number. Now watch what happens next. I stared at the screen, thumb frozen above the reply button. I didn't respond. I just sat there, phone still in my hand, the afterimage of Clara's face burned into my mind. Not broken. Not begging. Just, done. And maybe, just maybe, ready to burn it all down. The first leak hit Twitter just after midnight. It was a 10-second clip. Grainy, muffled, but unmistakable. Dorian Kells, glass raised, saying something about mutual elevation to a woman barely old enough to rent a car. The hashtags came fast. Hashtag or innovations, hashtag Kelsgate, hashtag corporate predator. By morning, it was everywhere. Every tech blog, every startup watchdog site. Even Forbes ran a headline, Charisma or Coercion, CEO Dorian Kells under fire. I sat at the kitchen table, drinking bitter coffee and scrolling in silence as the empire began to fall. My phone buzzed constantly, news alerts pinging like a countdown. Clara was nowhere in sight, but I knew she'd seen it. Hell, maybe she'd even pulled the trigger. A second video followed. Then a third. The dam had broken. Each video chipped away at Kel's mask. Secret dinners, whispered promises, footage of him leaning too close, touching too freely. Women started coming forward one by one. Former employees, interns, executives who'd left quietly years ago. Their stories echoed the same refrain. Fast promotions, conditional loyalty, emotional pressure disguised as opportunity. Aura's board went into lockdown. Stock prices nosedived before noon. By the end of the day, investors were demanding answers, and Dorian had gone dark. No public statement, no damage control. Just a hole where a kingdom used to be. Clara didn't say a word. She stayed in the guest room, curtains drawn, light off. I could hear her moving occasionally. A drawer opening, a suitcase zipping. But she didn't come to me, didn't try to explain. She was silent. But the silence wasn't hollow anymore. It was calculated, controlled, like she knew her moment hadn't come yet. Late that night, I saw a new post trending. Where's Clara Duvall? There was a still from one of the leaked clips. Clara standing near the back of a boardroom, arms crossed, watching Kel speak. People started asking questions. Who was she to him? Why was she there? What did she know? Her name was out now. Not accused, not condemned, but present. And that was enough to spark speculation. I stared at her picture on my screen, frozen in that split-second frame, and I couldn't tell what I felt. She looked like a stranger, but not a passive one. Was she a bystander? A cog in the machine? Or something more dangerous? The quiet force that cracked it open from the inside? She hadn't cried, hadn't begged. She hadn't denied anything either. All I knew was that the world was finally seeing the monster behind the curtain. And Clara, standing dead center in the spotlight's edge, wasn't blinking. I closed the laptop. Outside, the sky flickered with lightning. Sharp, white, and full of promise. Whatever storm was coming, it had already begun. The press conference was streamed live on every major outlet. I watched it from the break room at work, standing between a vending machine and the smell of burnt coffee. My coworkers clustered around the TV, whispering like they were watching someone else's world implode. But it wasn't someone else. It was mine. Clara stepped up to the podium like she'd been rehearsing the moment her whole life. She wore a dark navy suit, hair pulled back tight, no jewelry, no smile, just calm, even restraint. The kind of composure that corporate culture praises until it turns against you. Flashes popped. Reporters shouted her name. She didn't flinch. "My name is Clara Duvall," she began, her voice low and clear. "Until this morning, I served as Strategic Development Director at Aura Innovations. No pleasantries, no warm-up. She wasn't there to soften the blow. I'm here today to confirm that I have resigned from my position, effective immediately, and to take responsibility for my role in a culture that I now recognize was toxic, exploitative, and built on silence." A murmur rippled through the room. She didn't wait for it to settle. "I was complicit," she said. The word hit like a hammer. Not a victim, not a whistleblower, not a survivor trying to reclaim the narrative. Complicit. She didn't cry, didn't try to make herself small. For a long time, I told myself I was earning my place, that Dorian Kells saw potential in me, that the attention, the access, the fast-track promotions were recognition, not transactions. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I ignored it, I protected it, and I benefited from it. There was no emotion in her voice, just facts. I can't undo what I allowed, but I can stop pretending I didn't know. That's when I felt it, something shift. In her, in me, in the story we'd been dragging behind us like a broken sail. Someone asked why she was speaking now. Clara paused for half a second. "Because it matters that I do," she said simply. "Because for too long I was rewarded for staying quiet. And because the women who came forward deserve to know they weren't imagining it." That someone who stood next to the man responsible finally decided to stop standing still. There was no applause. Just the silence of people trying to figure out what to do with a confession they didn't expect. Later that night, I watched the clip again. Just the end. Clara stepping back from the podium, her hands steady, her face unreadable. I didn't know if I admired her or resented her. But for the first time since that rooftop gala, I believed one thing without question. She was no longer pretending. It was almost evening when I came home and found Clara in the bedroom standing in front of the open closet. Her side was nearly empty. A half-packed suitcase sat on the bed next to two smaller boxes filled with designer heels, monogrammed planners, and a few awards she used to keep on her office shelf. She didn't say anything when I walked in. Just kept folding a cashmere sweater into perfect thirds. "You don't have to rush out," I said quietly, standing in the doorway. "I'm not," she replied. "I'm just sorting." I nodded. A silence passed between us, not tense, just unfamiliar. Like we were guests in each other's lives again. The house felt different now. Lighter in some places, heavier in others. We hadn't really spoken since the press conference. A few nods. An exchange of coffee mugs. No big conversations. "Not yet. I left something on your desk," I said. She looked over at me, curious but guarded. I turned to leave, but stopped in the hallway, back still to her. "It's a journal," I added. Started at the night of the gala. Figured I'd write my way through the storm, maybe make sense of it. There's a letter inside the front cover. Another pause. "What does it say?" I shrugged. "Depends on the day you read it." She didn't follow me. Didn't press. Just let me walk down the hall like she understood some part of me needed the space. By the front door, I stood for a moment, keys in one hand, coat in the other. I wasn't sure where I was going, just that I needed air. Maybe some distance from the house that had held too many unspoken things lately. Clara's footsteps came soft behind me. She didn't reach out. Just stood nearby. "I read it," she said. "The letter." I turned slightly. She looked different, not lighter or sadder, just clear. "You asked what I actually want," she said. I waited. Clara looked down, then back up and said, "I want to become someone I can respect. Not someone who just survives. Someone real." I believed her. Not because she said it perfectly, but because for the first time in a long time she wasn't trying to sound perfect. "I may have to do that on my own," she added, her voice steady. "And I think I'm okay with that." I nodded. "So am I." We stood there for another beat. Not a goodbye. Not quite. When I stepped out onto the porch, she didn't follow. She went back inside, and I heard the slow, deliberate closing of a drawer. And just like that, we started the slow, quiet work of untangling, not from hate, not from betrayal, but from everything we'd been pretending not to see. Dorian Kells was arrested on a Thursday. The headlines didn't hold back. Aura CEO indicted on fraud, harassment, and retaliation. News vans lined the sidewalks outside the courthouse before sunrise. Someone even caught video of him being led away in handcuffs, jaw tight, still wearing his $1,000 suit. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. The evidence had already said enough. I watched the coverage from the small TV in my office break room, just like I had with Clara's press conference. This time, though, no one lingered to watch it with me. The world had already moved on to its next scandal. But I stayed. Because Clara was on the witness list. She sat in the courtroom 3 rows behind the prosecution, a legal pad in her lap, wearing a gray blazer I hadn't seen before. Not flashy. Not tailored to impress. Just simple and quiet like her. They didn't call her on day 1. But on day 2 she stood. The room didn't react when she walked up to the stand, no gasps, no whispers. She was just another name on a long list of people who had worked under Dorian. But when she spoke, the air shifted. She didn't read from a statement. Didn't choke up. She answered every question with a level voice and clear eyes. Yes, she said, Dorian had pushed boundaries. Yes, he rewarded those who didn't push back. No, he never threatened her directly, he didn't need to. The culture did it for him. And then came the question everyone had been waiting for. Did you benefit from this environment, Ms. Duval? A beat. Then she said yes. I did. And I wish I could say I didn't see it at the time. But I did. I just didn't want to lose what I thought I'd earned. No tears. No rehearsed sorrow. Just truth. When she stepped down, I felt something tighten in my chest. Not pride. Not forgiveness. Just this low, steady ache, the kind that comes when you realize someone you loved is no longer the person you knew, but maybe, just maybe, something stronger. After court adjourned, I watched from a distance as reporters swarmed the others. Clara wasn't approached. She didn't make a statement. Didn't try to claim heroism. She just slipped out the side door and into a cab alone. The internet argued about her for days, some called her brave, others called her a traitor to the silence they wanted to maintain. Clara didn't respond to any of it. She didn't post. Didn't tweet. She didn't ask for grace. She just lived like she had nothing left to perform for. And from the sidelines I watched. Still unsure if I was mourning the woman I lost or quietly beginning to respect the one she was trying to become. The letter came in a plain white envelope with my name written in Clara's handwriting, that tight, slanted print I used to recognize on shopping lists and birthday cards. No return address. No perfume. Just paper. Inside was a folded sheet and tucked within it, a bus ticket. I stared at the destination for a long time. Woodville, Georgia. Population maybe 500. One grocery store. One diner. And a little patch of land we once talked about turning into something real, a house with a porch, chickens maybe, quiet mornings, honest skies. We'd passed through it on a drive 8 years ago, back when things felt more like us. Back when we talked about one day leaving behind the conference calls, the business dinners, the city noise. It was just a dream then, a way to laugh off the pressure of everything climbing around us. Now it was a question. Her note was short. 3 sentences. Harold? No promises. No excuses. Just a chance to talk if you still want to. I'll be there Friday waiting at the station. I won't stay long. Clara. No, love. No apology. Just an invitation. I held the ticket like it might disintegrate. 100 emotions crawled through me. Anger, longing, confusion, exhaustion. I'd spent months unraveling what she'd hidden, what she'd become, what I had let slide. But she was right. This wasn't a plea. It wasn't even about us. It was about whether I could look in the mirror and see a man who had made peace with the past or one who kept letting it own him. Later that night, I sat outside with a drink, the ticket folded on the table beside me. The air was cool. Quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't ask for anything. I thought about the rooftop gala, how she laughed with someone else while I shrank into the crowd. I thought about that rainy night in Atlanta, the flickering traffic light, the text from Reed, the steady unraveling of everything I thought I knew. And now here I was, staring at a new beginning with no script, no guarantees. Clara wasn't asking to rebuild what we had. She wasn't offering a redo. She was offering a clean page, not for us, but for the versions of ourselves we hadn't met yet. I didn't know if I trusted her. But maybe that didn't matter. The question wasn't whether she deserved another chance. The question was whether I could still be the kind of man who took one. I picked up the ticket, slipped it into my wallet, and exhaled into the night. Sometimes closure doesn't come in the form of answers. Sometimes it's just a seat on a bus headed toward whatever's next.